All right. Okay, so the activity the kids are going to do, what will the kids do first? If you're talking and telling them something, what will they be doing first?
Listening.
So, like, listen to the teacher. Now, you might have them before the activity. You might have them, like, she had them sort some words and read some words with her. So you might even have the kids read some words ahead of time. You don't have to, but that might be something you think would work best to teach this lesson.
So
If you're teaching punctuation, you might have them spot the punctuation in the book before they start reading. That might be an activity you do. What were you going to say?
could we say listening for instruction or just listening?
It would need to be specific. Okay. What are they going to be listening to? Okay. Like, listen to the teacher explain the book or whatever it is. You just want them to be doing the opposite of what you're doing, you know? Okay. And so then, and that would be take maybe 5 minutes. You're going to break it down by minutes. And you should only spend 15 minutes. You could argue 10, you could argue 20, but we'll just say 15 minutes so we'll all be on the same page here. So the kids are going to listen to the teacher, either give instructions, you could say that, or do a book walk or a book introduction. And then if you're going to have them do anything before they read, write that here. And then they're going to read the book to you. So just write, the children will read the book. That'll take like 5 minutes. And then they should be doing something after the book. Maybe it's answering comprehension questions, or maybe it's going to write something on the desks in response to what they read. So there should be something that they do after they read the book. So that 15 minutes total, break it down to at least, it might be 1 or 2 minutes, or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, however you want to break it down, just as long as it's not one whole 15 minutes, kids read the book. That would not be good.
Does the comprehension, like mine's punctuation, does it have to tie back into the punctuation?
Not the comprehension questions. Okay. That's the only time that yours won't be focused on the exact framework. As every book we read, we always want to ask the comprehension question. So I see what you mean, though. It's not exactly tied to punctuation, but you always want to ask a comprehension question. Okay, then it says, what instructional materials will you use? What people forget a lot is the book. Tell me the title of the book right there. That's the most important material you're going to be using. And then if you're going to use magnetic letters or have them write anything or a whiteboard, you don't have to. You could just use the book. But if you think of a creative way to teach the lesson and you want to use another type of material, write that on here. If you say you're going to use a smart board, then we have to make sure it's working. Because I want you to really use whatever you say you're going to use. So if you don't want to have to bring all that junk, then just say you just tell me what you are going to use. It needs to match when you come in here and you actually do your lesson to what it says is on here. And then it says, why have you chosen these materials? Well, I gave you the book. But why will this book be helpful for this lesson? So you could say, because this book has lots of punctuation in it. This book is on their reading level. That's a really big one. The book is on their reading level. The book has good picture support. Those are some reasons why we pick a book. On page 7, it's accommodations. On this one, you will not have to do accommodations. So put an X on accommodations. But this is for if you have a child and you're a special needs or gifted and talented student, you would put any accommodations right there. For the next lesson, we'll include that. I'll just let you draw out of a bowl what your special needs child is. ADHD or autistic or hearing, and then you'll be doing some research to determine some ways to make accommodations. So the last page is page 8. It's evaluation. How do you evaluate student learning? It says show multi-level. So circle multi-level, and then circle variety of assessments. So that means it must be at least 2 things.
For each one?
For this lesson, you need at least 2 types of assessment.
So formal and informal.
So an informal could be observation, but don't just tell me I'm going to observe. Tell me what you're going to be observing for. Like, I'm going to observe the student's ability to stop at periods, or I'm going to observe the student's ability to read short A words. Tell me what you're going to be looking for specifically when you're observing. And then you could choose to do a running record, like we talked about over here. Let me show her what that is. This is a running record. It's check marks, and then you write the words they missed. There's other types of assessments that you can use depending on what your framework is. You can internet search for ways to assess different types of skills. Raise your hand if you have a skill that we haven't talked about much yet that you're going to choose. Which one were you choosing, Tanya?
I can't find it in here now.
Bless your heart. It's been
I
lost.
think it was in language instead of reading.
Okay. Well, that would still work in language probably,
Oh, okay.
as long as we can tie it to reading, which I think we could.
I think it was on, like, using capital letters and...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we could make that work for reading, maybe. So if we did use capital letters, then maybe for your assessment, you would have the child write a sentence and see if they would use a capital letter when it came time to write someone's name. That would be a good assessment. Like, we would call that a dictation, when you tell them a specific sentence to write. So if you're not, most of the time the people in this class are not used to thinking of assessments, reading assessments. You're new at this. So I can give you a lot of ideas like I'm trying right now, but it's so much at one time it's hard to remember all of these. But in your textbook, there will be types of assessments. Online, if you Google reading assessments and look up the specific type of assessment that you want, you'll be able to find different types of assessments. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. Just don't do a spelling test as an assessment of punctuation, because that doesn't really assess that. So make sure your assessment, what I'll do when I get your lesson plan is I'll look at your assessment. I'll make sure there's 2, for one thing. And then I'm going to check page 1 and see if it matches your goal, and if it really is assessing that goal that you stated earlier. And it says, why have you chosen this approach to evaluation? You need to choose the approach based on, like, you think your students' needs. Like, you could say, I'm going to do a computerized test for the students that would rather be tested on a computer, and I'll do a handwritten test for my students that would prefer that method. That would be a reason. Or you could say, I'm going to observe because I know that I'll be able to notice the kids that aren't reading out loud with punctuation. I'll be able to hear that, so I'm just going to listen for it. But then I can also do a test. You could do, for a formal observation for punctuation, might be having the student just read you a list of sentences, some that have periods, some that have comma or question marks, and then like put a check beside it if they read it with the right type of expression. So you can make your own assessment. You can make a checklist. You could make a list of sentences for them to read and put a check mark beside it if they do it correctly, or an X if they don't. So if you say I'm going to quiz them over the book, I'll take off at least half a point, because you have to tell me what the quiz would look like. Either make one for me or just tell me. I will quiz them and ask them questions about ants' homes, ants' bodies. Tell me what you're going to ask them. That's part of lesson planning. If you walked into a classroom and said, I'm going to give them a quiz afterwards, you have to have planned out what you're going to ask them, or it's not a real thorough lesson plan. So it has to be a thorough lesson plan, because I'm going to ask you when y'all come in here and you do this lesson for your friends, now ask them your questions or show me what you were going to do to evaluate. Okay?